Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Historymakers Gala 6 in Recognition Program. To announce the grand entrance of tonight's Historymakers, please give a warm welcome to our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Grady Gammage Jr.
Good evening. Let me introduce to you the first of this evening's Historymakers. Eddie Basha, accompanied by his wife Nadine. The next history maker for this evening, Jerry Colangelo, accompanied by his wife Jo. Our next history makers, Karl and Stevie Eller. Our next history maker, John F. Long, accompanied by his granddaughter Jamie Long Bilbraith. Our last history maker this evening, Paul J. Fannin, accompanied by his sons Tom and Bob. Ladies and gentlemen, we come together on this occasion every couple of years to remember that history doesn't just happen. It is made. It is shaped by people. And in Arizona, we are particularly fortunate that at our youthful age as a state, our history makers are still with us and are people we can celebrate and appreciate in an occasion like this. And so whenever we start one of these, every 2 years as we do it, I feel compelled to try to think a little bit about what's happened in the last 2 years. We went from before the millennium to after the millennium, and we survived the millennium and survived the Y2K bug. The new economy sort of arrived and then appears to maybe have left. We're not sure. We had an election. We'd never heard of Chad before the election. Now we're all intimately familiar with Chad. We had an election that was the closest in history, apparently proving that most of the country is in the middle. They're just not sure where in the middle they are. In Arizona, we had an election that many of you in this room were involved in, and I was involved in which, among other things, we managed to decide as a state that urban growth boundaries are a socialist plot pretty close to daylight saving time, which, you know, we're never going to let creep back in here. We, in that election, finally decided that building a football stadium was not a socialist plot. And a couple of the history makers this evening have been involved in things like stadia, and we'll be hearing from them later on, but neither of them emerged as the victor. The stadium is going to wind up on the shore of the Tempe Town Lake, which didn't exist 2 years ago, underneath the flight path of the third runway, which didn't exist 2 years ago. So it's been an interesting and an impressive couple of years. And as always, we have an impressive group of honorees to talk about and to talk with this evening. To get us started this evening, I would first like to introduce to you Barbara Simons, who is the chair of the Arizona Historical League. It's so bright up here, Barbara, I couldn't see you till you got like 8 feet away. It is very bright.
Thank you, Grady. And I have to tell you, this is bright.
Yes.
I can't see out there. But it's tough following you. Grady is so spectacular. He has been emceeing this program now every year except for our very first year, I believe. So thank you, Grady. You do a fabulous job. On behalf of the Historical League, as president, I do wish to welcome all of you here this evening. Prior to becoming president of the League, I had the privilege of chairing this event 4 years ago. The Historymakers Gala and Recognition Program, which was developed by the Historical League, I believe is the crowning jewel of the Historical League and one that I am very proud of. This is truly a special evening, and I know that you are going to find it very heartwarming and inspirational. I would like to take a couple minutes at this time, though, to tell you a bit about the Historical League and the Arizona Historical Society Museum in Papago Park. The Historical League is a volunteer organization that supports the Arizona Historical Society Museum in Papago Park, which is located at Curry and College. We volunteer our time to assist the museum with their various needs. We are a fundraising organization, and through our various fundraising activities, such as this event and our annual Children's Holiday Party, we grant funds to the museum each year to assist in some of their special projects and needs. The Historical League also incorporates Arizona history and historical places into most all of what we do. For our membership, we conduct historical tours, and we have monthly historical programs along with a lot of social events. Additionally, we do have a cookbook entitled Arizona's Cooking Heritage, an antique and contemporary collection. The Arizona Historical Society, which is essentially our parent organization, their mission is to collect, preserve, interpret, and disseminate the history of Arizona. Our museum in Papago Park, which is one of 4 of the Historical Society's museums throughout the state, it is an educational, research, and cultural center focusing on central Arizona's history. The museum is currently showcasing many exhibits such as Arizona's motorsports, Routes, a moving experience, and Views from the Home Front, which is Arizona transformed from World War II. And in the museum, we also have our very own Historymakers Hall, which is again something that the League helped to develop. And it is a rotating exhibit featuring all of our history makers and their memorabilia that they have donated to the museum. And lastly, there is a new exhibit, a rotating exhibit, that will be coming to the museum on March 1st, traveling from Kansas City on Negro League's Baseball All-Stars. So if that's of interest to anyone. I do encourage all of you to visit our museum and to become members of the Arizona Historical Society if you are not already a member. There is information in your Historymakers programs at your table about joining the Arizona Historical Society or the Historical League. And I would really encourage all of you to take your programs home this evening and read them. They are filled with fabulous information, particularly the bios on tonight's History Makers are just wonderful. So please take your brochures home or your programs home tonight. Now, it is my official honor to announce at this time that we have a new director at our museum. Joel Hiller has accepted the position as director of the Arizona Historical Society's museum in Papago Park. Joel has, for the last year, been the interim executive director for the Arizona Historical Society, which is our parent organization based in Tucson. And he will continue in that capacity until a permanent director for the society can be found. Joel, I know you're out there, but after having had the pleasure of working with you for the last year as the Society's interim executive director, we all have come to know firsthand the great value and skills you will be bringing in leadership here to our museum. We are all most thrilled to have you accept this position. Thank you, Joel. And finally, I hope all of you will also join me in thanking this year's History Maker Chairman, Zona Lorig. And by the way, what more appropriate name for an Arizona History Maker chair than Zona? She is an Arizona native. Zona has obviously put in an extraordinary effort in putting together this evening for all of our enjoyment. She's been unbelievably dedicated and worked extremely hard and been very attentive to every detail in making this evening come around. In fact, I have to tell you, I feel quite guilty that I haven't lost any sleep. I haven't even worried a bit about how this evening is going to come off because I knew Zona was in charge and doing such a fabulous job. I am very fortunate to have had her. So, Zona? On behalf of the Historical League and all of us here tonight, I do want to present you with a small token of our appreciation for your dedication and all your hard, diligent work. Thank you, Zona.
Thank you, Barbara. Good evening, and thank you for coming here tonight to help us recognize the 2001 Arizona Historymakers. We honor 6 outstanding Arizonans this evening for their contributions and achievements. These individuals are truly living history. We also celebrate 89 years of statehood for Arizona, February 14th, 1912. We're just 10 days late for the birthday. The Historymakers Gala applauds exceptional individuals from diverse areas. Many awards require the recipient to attend a luncheon or dinner where they receive a trophy or a plaque. I'm here to tell you, this honor requires a great deal of work. Each historymaker provides an extensive oral history. It's inspirational to read their stories, and it provides future generations information in their own words of our community leaders. Their life stories and photographs are collected. An official portrait is taken, and they contribute personal memorabilia that signifies their Arizona experiences, and you can see that in the exhibits here tonight. The Historical League is deeply grateful for the support of the community in creating this remarkable evening. We acknowledge the contributions of Dr. Edward Diethrich of the Arizona Heart Institute and VAS Communications for the production of the ingenious, interesting, and often touching videos that highlight the life of each honoree. Pat McMahon continues to charm us with his wonderful voice as narrator of the videos. We also recognize the professional assistance of K3TV in tonight's live production of the gala. We are indebted to the selection panel for their time, insight, and wise choices. Major corporations, the academic communities in our state, small businesses, and others cooperate in making this biennial event unique and special. The gala requires many hours of volunteer efforts. Through their individual and group responsibilities, the Gala Committee makes this event possible. Their tireless dedication and devotion reflects their commitment to the Historymakers program. In addition to honoring these eminent Arizonans, the funds raised by the Gala assist our museum in Papago Park. To our honorees, our heartfelt appreciation for participating as Historymakers in a program that adds to Arizona's rich cultural history. Now I invite you to enjoy our program. Thank you.
That is a great announcement about Joel Hiller's appointment as the permanent director of the museum. If any of you have not been to the museum lately, you need to go. For 5 years, I've been standing up here saying, just wait till next year. The museum will look a lot better next year. The museum will look, for those of you who haven't been there at all, the museum has had a long and complex birth. But it's real, and it is there, and it is great. I was there twice in the last year, and it's very exciting. And it really does begin to tell the story of modern Arizona and how we got here. Now, the next part of the program is a presentation on behalf of the state of Arizona. As you know, for many years, Governor Hull has blessed this meeting with her presence here. She could not be here this evening, but she sent her lawyer and all of your lawyers, and even my lawyer, Janet Napolitano, the Attorney General of the state of Arizona.
Thank you, Grady. I don't know how to respond to that except that I charge a very reasonable fee. Just think of me with red hair and a little thinner, and you'll have the governor up here. But it's my honor to read the proclamations on behalf of the state of Arizona for people who are well deserving of this great honor, and for those of us who are transplants, to remind us of the great richness and diversity of the history of our state. And with the history that we have and its greatness, we can only predict an even more wonderful future. So let me, if I might, begin with the first proclamation. By the way, just to keep you all in suspense, I have not put these in alphabetical order. The first honoree is John Frederick Long, and I will read the proclamation. Whereas John Frederick Long sees himself as an ordinary man, instead he is an ultra hard-working businessman, visionary, and an unconventional philanthropist. And whereas from his earliest days as an Arizona paperboy in 1928 to his years building Arizona's first master plan community where affordable homes were offered to thousands of Arizonans, he never wavered in his community service and generosity. Innovative ideas such as modular mass production building techniques and the world's first solar energy subdivision mark his long career. And whereas John Long is an impatient man with some bureaucratic processes, where he saw a need, he donated labor and materials. He filled potholes on 550 miles of Phoenix streets. He built a facility for the treatment of alcoholism, and he donated 21 townhomes to the Phoenix Affordable Housing Program. And whereas John was the first developer to include areas for parks, schools, and other services in his planned housing community in Maryvale, and whereas today he has redirected his energy to commercial properties while still including communities in his land philanthropies. Phoenix, Peoria, Avondale, and Glendale are all benefactors of this man's generosity, and Valley citizens are grateful. Now, therefore, the state of Arizona hereby proclaims John Frederick Long as one of the 2001 Historymakers. The next honoree is Paul Fannin. Here are the whereases. Whereas Paul Fannin belies the ubiquitous term politician. His personal motto says it all. Let the other fellow have the credit if that's going to get the job done. He never tried to act like the governor or as a senator. And whereas he is almost a Phoenix native, he was a babe in arms when his family settled here in 1910. He went to local schools, including the University of Arizona, but was a graduate of Stanford University. And, okay. It's okay. And whereas, as a successful businessman, he was urged to run for governor as a Republican when Democrats outnumbered Republicans 6-1, was elected and served 3 times. And whereas, when elected to the Senate, Paul Fannin proved his mettle in leading the battle on the Senate floor for the Central Arizona Project. It was his energy and extensive knowledge of Arizona, working jointly with the ailing Senator Karl that secured Arizona's desperate need for more water. And whereas, as a dignified and refined politician, Paul Fannin believes the glory of politics, if it comes at all, is short-lived. Its rewards come only from the successful accomplishment of a basic purpose, to benefit the people who are being served. Now, therefore, the state of Arizona proclaims Paul Fannin as a 2001 history maker.
I wish you could all have seen how Janet's eyes lit up at that 6-to-1 ratio when she, yeah, those were the days.
Oh, they're coming back. They're coming back. Eddie Basha. Whereas Eddie Basha is head of Arizona's only family-owned supermarket chain, and whereas a multifaceted man, Eddie also avidly collects contemporary Western American and Native American art and shares his collections via his private museum. Whereas Eddie can trace his Arizona roots back to territorial Arizona and his grandparents, who were immigrants from Lebanon. A dedicated passion for history has not diminished since he earned a degree in this subject from Stanford University. And whereas, acknowledging his father as his mentor, Eddie has given broadly to his home state in the name of education and children. His service includes membership on the Chandler School Board, the State Board of Education, and the Arizona State Board of Regents. And whereas, because of Eddie's diverse interests and skill, he is often recruited by civic groups and organizations for board membership or to enter the world of Arizona politics. whereas he has fed the hungry and involved himself in building stronger economic and social bonds between Native American and other minority communities in Arizona, Eddie Basha, a strong family man, has almost done it all. Now, therefore, the state of Arizona proclaims Eddie Basha a 2001 history maker. Karl and Stevie Eller. Whereas Karl and Stevie Eller are unbeatable as a team, excelling in business, rearing a family, and in their philanthropic dedication to the Phoenix community and the University of Arizona, whereas Karl built a corporate career in media and advertising, serving as board chairman and CEO of a number of major U.S. corporations, including Eller Outdoor Advertising, Combined Communication Corporation, Gannett Company, Columbia Pictures, Circle K, and Eller Media Company, and whereas Stevie was president of Circle K Travel and co-owner with Karl of Red River Resources, Inc., among other business enterprises, and whereas Stevie's skills are unsurpassed in her selfless gift of board service and chairing events for countless community organizations, as well as local, state, and federal government philanthropic endeavors, and whereas the Ellers' personal philanthropy and gifts to their alma mater, the University of Arizona, along with time, talent, and dedicated effort, set them apart to stand as exemplary alumni to all citizens of Arizona, the state of Arizona proclaims them 2001 history makers. Jerry Colangelo. Whereas Jerry Colangelo is an all-American, red, white, and blue success story, born in Chicago Heights, Illinois, to a working-class Italian-American family, he excelled from the beginning in ambition, sports, and leadership. And whereas Jerry made the all-state basketball team at Bloom Township High, where he received 66 opportunities for athletic scholarships at graduation. And whereas he graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in physical education, where he earned all Big Ten honors, and 4 years later began his career in professional sports management with Chicago's new basketball expansion team. At this new expansion team, he and the new team's advertising agency developed the logo and named the team the Bulls. And whereas in 1968, at age 28, Jerry became general manager of Arizona's NBA expansion team, the state's first step into Major League sports. He was named NBA Executive of the Year, an unprecedented 4 times. And whereas his life is not all Phoenix Suns basketball, he is owner, chairman, and CEO of the Arizona Diamondbacks baseball team. And whereas his board memberships, community service, and personal awards cover a broad spectrum of organizations, his core is his strong faith and personal belief in God's plan for his life. Through service to his faith, there is no question that Jerry Colangelo lives each day in strict adherence to his convictions. Now, therefore, the state of Arizona proclaims Jerry Colangelo a 2001 history maker. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Janet. All right, the part of the evening that you have all been waiting for has finally arrived. And it is now time for us to meet our first Arizona history maker of the evening.
Often, one's mark comes unforeseen. A fork in the road, if you will, where a celebrated citizen decides that his or her role, their calling, exists in serving their community and its citizens. One celebrated Phoenician's career change in the mid-1950s from successful businessman to elected official came sudden and unplanned. A personal transformation for which the state of Arizona shall be eternally grateful. Paul Jones Fannin, to some known affectionately as Pablo, born to the Bluegrass State in 1907. By the time Paul was 3, the family had sold off its lumber mill business and headed for the warm confines of the budding community, Phoenix, Arizona. The Fannins first operated a dairy and later a successful farm supplies store, where Paul served in many capacities from a very early age. Following educational stints at Kenilworth Elementary, Phoenix Union High, and later Stanford University, Pablo returned to Phoenix to operate one of the family's newly established hardware stores. Leisure time was scarce for the industrious young man, but he did manage to find some for the celebrated Funk Jewels softball team. Pablo became the Jewels' ace pitcher as the squad piled up numerous state and national tournament titles. And the family business also continued to triumph, even during the Depression, setting the stage for an entrepreneurial venture with brother Ernest. The brothers founded the Fannin Gas and Supply Company and took to the road with their sales staff, going door to door throughout the Southwest, marketing their new liquefied petroleum business to communities not yet served by electricity. The company thrived, even expanding into the gas appliances and refill tank business, establishing the Fannin name as one of the most recognizable and successful in the state. With Fannin Gas and Supply flourishing, Paul soon embarked on a new era in his life, one of giving back to the state that had brought him so much prosperity. He became the president of the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce and Arizona Better Business Bureau. He spearheaded the formation of the Thunderbirds and ultimately became the chairman of the Phoenix Open, launching what would later become the state's premier annual sports event. His reputation as a strong voice within the community led to a 1957 call from an old childhood friend with an opportunity for yet another challenging endeavor. While serving on an ad hoc committee searching for a new Arizona governor with U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater, one name kept rising above the fray. In an era when Democrats outnumbered Republicans in Arizona 4-1, the campaign became a grassroots, unpolished, but diligent and victorious endeavor. Fannin eventually served 3 terms as governor with countless achievements, including his ceaseless work to attract industry to the state, his crafting of legislation to provide a statewide tax equalization program, establishing Arizona's junior college system, and chartering the Arizona-Sonora West Coast Trade Commission with Mexico. As governor, Paul was a champion for growth, but one issue was impeding this course: rights to Colorado River water for Arizona. And as his 3rd term wound down, fate stepped in once again. Senator Barry Goldwater decided to vacate his seat for a run at the United States presidency. And Goldwater once again looked to his longtime friend as his hand-picked successor. Another triumphant Fannin campaign followed. The new junior Arizona U.S. Senator was welcomed to our nation's capital unceremoniously by receiving notice that his office would be located in a remote area of the capital. But with the Central Arizona Project issue heating up, longtime Arizona Senator Karl Hayden let it be known that his novice cohort would be moving in next door to him to work on this important issue. From that office, and more notably from the Senate floor, Fannin took center stage. With Senator Hayden ailing, Fannin headed up the battle for Arizona's water rights. And in 1968, President Lyndon Johnson signed the bill for the CAP, giving the Grand Canyon State its fair share of the Colorado River flow. In his 12 years in the Senate, Fannin's influence was unwavering. He went on to prevail in many other causes for Arizona citizens and other Americans, including the landmark Right to Work bill. After a triumphant and energetic 18 years of service to his state and country, Paul Fannin settled into retirement in 1977 with his dear wife, Elma. He continued to provide guidance and counsel to his successors and leadership to his beloved Arizona. Not bad for an unassuming and humble former businessman. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arizona history maker Paul Jones Fannin.
Senator Fannin's award this evening will be presented by two people who know him really well, his sons, Tom and Bob.
Dad, when I was a young man, I can recall campaigning on your behalf, and I used to say to people, if you knew my dad like I know my dad, you'd vote for him. Well, I'm just as proud today as I was then, and it's an honor for me to present this to you in behalf of the Arizona Historical Society.
My dad wanted me to express our thanks to the Arizona Historical League, particularly to Zona Lorig, who has been at our doorstep daily, it seems, for about the last year and a half, to Barbara Simons, to the whole group. I know so many of you have worked for so long, and my dad wanted to thank them. It's so nice to be associated with so many history makers tonight, the Longs, the Ellers, the Colangelos, and I guess most importantly, the chairman of the Democrats for Paul Fannin for Senate 1964, Eddie Basha, who he's one, obviously, that our family dearly loves. He loves Arizona, and he is so proud that you've given him this honor. Thank you very much.
I would just like to tell Senator Fannin one personal note. This is for you and for Representative Rhodes. This year, the Central Arizona Project Canal will, for the first time in Arizona history, deliver the full allotment of 1.5 million acre feet to Central Arizona. Now, let's meet our next Arizona history maker.
It was storybook, U of A style. The lad, a son of a hardworking single mother, local Tucson star athlete who worked odd jobs to keep the family afloat and save enough money for his own college education. The young lady, cheerleader daughter of a well-to-do Midwest family. Asthma sufferer who moved unaccompanied to the dry, clean air of Tucson for a fresh start and a future as a school teacher. So what was it that brought these two together?
I liked his body. That's all there was to it then. Very simple.
Now, the real story.
Hi, I'm Karl Eller, and I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. We lived right across from the university. I remember sleeping outside in an area that had chicken wire around it, and I slept on a cot, and we took sheets and wet the sheets down and put the sheets over the chicken wire and hoped the wind would blow, and hoped that would cool down the area. And I guess that was evaporative cooling in those days. So we all had to work, and so I began working when I was little. I always delivered newspapers. I used to have to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I had a very big paper route in Tucson. I think I covered everything in northeast Tucson. I saw lads in the high school paper. I was always, for some reason, interested in the advertising business.
My name was Joanne Ray Stevens, and my fateful trip to Tucson with my dad was just a ton of fun. We had such a good time. I've never taken a trip before or since with him when we went out to Tucson. And it was a long train trip, too. We arrived in Tucson. It was so hot. It was in June. It opened that door of the train, and I thought I jumped into the oven. The next morning, we walked on the U of A campus, and I just thought it was fabulous. Matter of fact, I didn't have asthma the 4 years I was in college at the U of A.
I met her after an Arizona State-Arizona football game a little over 50 years ago, and we've been practically going ever since.
As the story goes, their first date went something like this. Karl asked Stevie out for a soda. Then Stevie paid for the sodas. But that would be the last time Stevie would have to treat. Before she knew it, Karl took to hawking sodas and class notes to fellow students on campus. These and other brazen displays of free enterprise not only paid for future dates with Stevie, but also procured her engagement ring. The couple was married just 2 days after their college graduation. Stevie had no trouble finding work as a schoolteacher, but Karl would be forced to pay his dues in the demanding world of advertising.
I was just hired in Tucson, Arizona as a leaseman for Foster and Kleiser Company, which was the outdoor advertising company. I didn't really know what I was doing. My first thing, I went down to the county courthouse and I started looking at the records, who owned the property in various areas around the town, and all of a sudden I saw Ivo DiConcini's name on line after line of property, which went on for page after page. I went up to his office, which was a big, little small office with lots of papers strung up all over the place, and I told him what we wanted to do, and he thought about it a while, and he said, you know, I wouldn't mind putting some signs on our property, but when I call you, I want the sign down. Number 2, I don't want to sign a lease. And number 3 is you got to pay me the same amount of money for every sign you put up. I didn't know any different. I called my boss, who was in Phoenix. I said to him, I said, well, you know, if you want to be in the outdoor advertising business in Tucson, Arizona, I think you ought to make a deal with this guy. He owns every piece of property, every section corner and everything else in Tucson.
Karl had landed a jewel of an account, but times were still tough for the newlyweds.
I made more money than he did. He was getting $180 a month leasing billboard space in Tucson, and I was making $3,000 a year teaching school in Tucson the first year. By the 3rd year, he caught up and passed me. It was okay.
In Tucson, Karl refined his sales skills, and after a few years of stellar work, he was rewarded with a promotion to manager of the agency's Chicago office. But returning home to the cold Midwest was not exactly what Stevie had longed for.
I hated it, absolutely hated it. All I wanted to do was live in Arizona the rest of my life. I must say, we were really counting the years till we were 65 to be sure we got back to Arizona to live.
As tough as the Chicago stint was for Stevie, it provided Karl with a well-rounded experience in all avenues of advertising, such as radio, television, and print. Skills that would serve him well in the future. And Stevie shook the wintry weather blues by beginning her distinguished career as a dedicated community volunteer, joining the Evanston Women's Club. After a few years in the Windy City, the owners of Karl's agency decided to sell their interests in Phoenix and Tucson. They informed Karl that if he could raise $5 million, it was his. 6 months later, it was.
And that's when I started in business on March 17th, 1962 in Phoenix, Arizona, and in the outdoor advertising business, and I called it the Eller Outdoor Advertising Company.
An entrepreneur was born. The business prospered throughout the 60s, and with TV and radio garnering more and more influence over the buying public, Karl set his sights on a new brainchild. He merged Eller Outdoor with companies holding broadcasting licenses. The lucrative enterprise would become Combined Communications and would eventually operate 37 media interests across the U.S. and Canada, including KTAR television and radio in Phoenix. CCC was so lucrative that many of the largest media conglomerates wanted in. One suitor was the renowned Gannett Company, and in 1979, a mutually beneficial merger transpired. But within just months, it became clear to Karl that this new business partnership was ill-suited. So he left Gannett and joined Columbia Pictures as their CEO in 1980. Karl served at the studio until he orchestrated yet another high-profile merger, this time between Columbia and the Coca-Cola Company. But commuting from his home in Phoenix to Los Angeles and Atlanta became tedious and eventually unfulfilling. Karl needed a new challenge closer to home, and he found one when friend Fred Hervey invited him to join the Circle K Corporation's board of directors.
And I can remember about 3 months after I was on the board that Fred came to me and said, "How would you like to run Circle K?" So I decided to take it on and invested a lot of money into it, my own money.
An aggressive expansion plan was set forth by Karl and his management team, growing the Arizona-based chain from 700 to nearly 5,000 stores in 25 states. For nearly 7 years, the company continued to grow in both size and in sales. But as the 80s turned into the 90s, Circle K quite literally ran out of gas. Fuel prices soared, debts rose, and eventually both the company and Karl were broke.
The Circle K thing, when it hit hard, and at the same time, all the financial institutions were going through the RTC problems, and I had at that time a lot of real estate. I had a number of investments, and everything all of a sudden went underwater. At that time was the lowest point of my life, and it wasn't.
Well, I think everybody in their own life knows that when times are tough is when you get yourself together. You sort of take stock and look at yourself and decide what the important things are in life, and then you get busy and do it.
Like the mythical namesake of his adopted hometown, Karl's career would rise from the ashes. He was dubbed the Phoenix of Phoenix by Forbes magazine. It would be in familiar territory where Karl would make his comeback.
Finally started working my way out of it, around starting in '92. Got back in the outdoor advertising business, which I always tell the students at the U of A and everywhere else that stick to a business you know best. And I knew the advertising business, so got back in the outdoor advertising business and been there ever since.
By 1997, the revitalized Eller Media Company had moved into 32 major metropolitan markets and joined forces with the national advertising firm Clear Channel Communications, an alliance for which Clear Channel paid over $1 billion for the privilege. But the collaboration that has been most successful in Karl's life continues to be the one with his U of A sweetheart.
I like being a cheerleader. It's fun. I've done it for my children, I've done it for my husband, I've done it for my causes, and it's kind of neat to have the opportunity to do that.
Stevie's commitment to countless charitable causes, not just in Arizona, but also internationally, is unparalleled by perhaps anyone in the Valley. Built on a philosophy of contributing as much or more time than money to these endeavors.
I guess I've always been pretty outgoing. I often wish I were less so. When I go into a situation, I think I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be quiet and I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to get into this. I'm just going to hear what everybody else has to say, and that magic red button gets pushed one way or another, and man, I'm in with all 10 talents. I think of something I can do or something somebody else can do and kind of get myself involved.
She's fought poverty in South America, represented the United States at the Australian Bicentennial, and given tireless, selfless gifts of service locally to efforts such as the Arizona Science Center and Herberger Theater, to name but a very few. In addition to their community service, the couple has been dedicated champions for all Arizona sports fans, playing key leadership roles in landing NFL and NBA franchises in Phoenix. They were also charter members of the Fiesta Bowl Committee and led efforts to promote ASU and the U of A into the big-time Pac-10 conference. But perhaps the institution that has benefited most from all of the Eller's generosity is one they hold nearest and dearest to their hearts.
The U of A was practically my whole life since I was a kid. When I got out, I always said, you know, someday I'd like to give back to the school. When I had a chance, I guess it was about 15 or 16 years ago now, I had a chance to start this entrepreneurship program at the University of Arizona. I just felt like it was a way to pay back to the school. I was lucky enough to have the ability to pay back and was willing to do it. And so it puts a lot of joy in your heart when you do it.
This program is now called the Karl Eller Center for the Study of Free Enterprise Economy. Along with the U of A Foundation, the college has benefited to a sum nearing $200 million, all due to a committed love affair. A love affair for the alma mater that provided a setting for a textbook courtship and enduring storybook partnership.
And we help each other. We're good sounding boards for each other because he's the world's biggest optimist. I was till I met him. And I became more of the not so optimistic because he just never even sees the other side. And I think he needs to be aware of it. So I try to help him out.
I don't know what I would do without her. She's a great influence on my life. Been a great mother. She's raised our children fantastically. We got two great children. I don't think I probably would have ever done what I've done without her as a partner. And she stuck me when things were down low, and she stuck with me when things were good. And we just have made a very good team.
When I feel like I can't get over the solid white cliffs of Dover, when I don't know what to do, maybe see me through.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arizona history makers Karl and Stevie Eller.
Well, I've been too long in the storm. I feel so sad and forlorn.
Stevie and Karl's History Maker Award will be presented by the president of the University of Arizona, Dr. Peter Likens.
Karl and Stevie, you made a lot of history in Arizona, but you made a lot of friends, too. Here's a room full of people who love you, and my wife and I are privileged to be among them. You've been gracious to so many folks in Phoenix. I'm sure they love you here, but they can't love you like we do in Tucson, Arizona, on that wildcat country. Yes, that's boy. These are wildcats through and through, Stevie and Karl. Story legend says he began his wildcat history as a water boy at the age of 8. Is that true? And they met there and fell in love there and got married 48 years ago. It's a wonderful story. We've been married 45 years, Pat and I, and so we understand you've been through some ups and downs. Well, we all do in that period of time, and we're proud to be your friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Peter, very much. It's a great pride for Stevie and I to be congratulated like this and to have this honor. I'd like to do one thing here, though. The things that Stevie and I had most in our life is faith, family, and friends. And I'd like to introduce my children and my family here. First, I'd like to introduce Phyllis and Bill Kratz, who's Stevie's sister. And then I'd like to introduce Alyssa, our daughter, and Mark Goodman, her husband. And then my son, Scott, and his 4 kids, who are our grandchildren, Alyssa, Brianna, Kayla, and Max. And they're the light of our lives, and we're glad to have them here. And we'd like to welcome, or congratulate, or welcome all our friends who came here to stand by us at this historical thing. Now, you know, I always get tears in my eyes when I do this, but I'm going to weather the storm. But, you know, when it seems like just yesterday that I grew up in Tucson, and I was just a kid, and I met Stevie at the University of Arizona. That was over 50 years ago. And it's just, time has gone like that. And you know, a lot of people often look at Stevie and I as a team. And you know, it makes you think of Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire won a lot of, honors in dancing throughout his life. But it kind of reminds you of Ginger Rogers, who danced backwards on high heels, and she made it happen. And We're glad to be honored here tonight and to give a little bit back to this great state to make it a better place to live. Thank you very much.
Go Sun Devils. I'm sorry. It was just almost too much Wildcat stuff. Now let's meet our next Arizona history maker.
When we first started in Maryville in 1954, this area was all agricultural, dairy farming, vegetables, cotton, so forth. Well, my wife's name is Mary, and Vale is a green valley, so Mary Vale. When we started, there was a shortage of homes, and there was quite a few people moving into the Phoenix area and into the valley. And I guess the uniqueness of our homes has always been that we were lower priced than anyone else. We had the true affordable housing. Well, I've always felt that it was important to build a community rather than just the homes. And as fast as we were building and moving people in, and a lot of them hadn't established roots in the valley, and it was important to have schools and parks, and recreation areas, and churches. And that's the reason why we developed the overall community concept.
Like an island with no beach or a room with no walls, a house is not a home without a community. It is incomplete. Since the 1950s, John F. Long has been dedicated to this philosophy. Building homes, building dreams, building community.
I was born in Phoenix. I'm a native here. Well, one of the kind of a rare things is to find a native that has lived here most of their life. Grew up in on the west side and went to Phoenix Union, and then I graduated at Glendale High School in 1939. So anyway, I'm familiar with the area.
Born John Frederick Long in 1920, the oldest son of German immigrants, he grew up all over the state, living in Phoenix, Globe, Flagstaff, even Prescott. As an 8-year-old child, he polished his salesmanship selling newspapers on Phoenix corners. He developed his work ethic doing chores in the family farm. He was a child that had no dreams of extravagant wealth. John figured he would just be a farmer. But while building what he intended to be his first home, John unknowingly stumbled upon his life's path.
I got out of the Army latter part of 1945, and then I was married in 1947, and I used my GI Bill to get a financing on a home. We were planning this house for our own use, and had an opportunity to sell it before we had it completed. And when I say we, Mary and I did practically all of the work on the home from the ground up. It took us 6 months to build the first one. And then I had an opportunity to sell it, and I convinced Mary that would be the right thing to do. It wasn't easy to convince her to sell that first house.
John thought he had it made when he earned $4,500 off that house. So much so that he kept on doing it 13 additional times.
Mary, she was my helper all the way through. It was hot, and sometimes she didn't do exactly as I wanted her, whatever we were setting up, and sometimes I'd talk to her like she was a hod carrier, and she let me know that I'd better stop that, or I'd be out there by myself.
In 1949, the business grew when John started building subdivisions. Mary's manual labor days were behind her. John began hiring entire crews. By 1954, his vision expanded even further when he began developing the idea for a master-planned community out west of Phoenix that would eventually become known as Maryvale.
Well, it was considered quite a ways out at that time. But in order to develop an overall master-planned community, we needed a large site. And close in, you couldn't find anything that would meet our requirements. In most cases, anyway, the man and wife, young couples, buying a new home, both of them have to be working. And if they have children, that's not the most conducive to good family relationships. Both are tired in the evening and so forth. And our philosophy has always been to provide affordable type, I say it has always been. Nowadays it's hard to build an affordable house. But early on, when we started here, our 3-bedroom, 2-bath home was $7,400. Total payment, monthly payment was $52 a month. Taxes, everything. Now their water bill's more than that. We were the first major builder to use built-in appliance. We made it easier for the home buyer. We handled all the financing, whether it was FHA or VA. We made it simple. A lot of our procedures were adopted, and others followed along the same lines. In the late 50s and early 60s, we were building as many as 25 houses a day. Our method of construction was on an assembly line basis. Our crews moved from one house to the other rather than the assembly line moving.
25,000 homes later, Maryvale shined as an example of community planning. John was the first developer to include areas for parks, schools, churches, and other community services. He pioneered new ideas where communities were entirely powered by solar energy. It was at this time that he also began to actively partake in civic philanthropy.
Well, this is on the home improvement for the whole area. We donate the paint and shrubbery and so forth, and one of the requirements is that the homeowner do the work. It's a well-known fact, if you get everything for nothing, you really don't appreciate it.
John's enormous gifts to the valley are too numerous to count. He's donated time, land, labor, and dollars for countless worthwhile projects, such as building schools, alcohol treatment centers, and enhancing Maryvale Hospital Medical Center. He's given townhomes to the Phoenix Affordable Housing Program. He's filled potholes in 550 miles of valley streets. He's served in government. The list just goes on and on. You see, John does all this because he believes in community, in serving it, and in keeping it strong. Unlike many builders, John didn't build and then abandon. He still, to this day, lives in and works for his beloved West Side. He has dramatically shaped the landscape of this valley we live in. For many young families, he has provided an opportunity to fulfill a lifelong dream. He has turned houses into homes, homes into communities.
Seen a lady at the mall here a while back that had lived in our home. Well, she said she'd lived there 38 years. She likes it. She's thinking about making it permanent.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome history maker John F. Long.
Presenting John's award is former Arizona Governor and history maker Rose Mofford.
Thank you. Good evening. What can you say about someone that came from humble beginnings and rose to the very heights of success by intelligence, grit, and the right to carry on? Well, that's enough about me. We're here tonight to honor my friend of 50 years. And to me and his many friends, he's from A to Z, Arizona. I had a 30-minute speech prepared, and after hearing the proclamation and seeing this wonderful video, I've decided to just put some personal notes here. Many years ago, I was playing softball for the Arizona Cantaloupe Queens, and his lovely wife was playing for the Webster Dairy Maids. And of course, who would be in the audience? None other than John cheering her on. And I heard a boo in the audience, and I think it was John booing me because I couldn't get a hit. But seriously, when I knew that I was going to make this presentation, I thought, well, I'm not going to read everything that I've heard about him, and it's all excellent. But I'll tell you one thing. He's left an indentation in this valley and state in this nation that will be hard to surpass. He goes from athletics, arts, and on down the line, clear to the zoo. This man has done more with his generosity than anyone else I know. I must tell you also that when I went around, and I went to my dentist, who's from Glendale, by the way, and he was doing a deep clean on me, I made the mistake of saying, "What can you tell me about John Long?" Well, he didn't hurt me, but he never stopped raving about what a wonderful person he was. And he said, "I'll tell you one thing, Rose, Glendale wouldn't be on the map if it wasn't for John Long." Well, then I ran into a good friend that went to school with John. His name was Joe Hunter. And Bill Kitchikow and many in the audience know who I'm talking about. And he said, "Rose, you don't have enough time to tell this to the audience because all of our good times were held at the Riverside Ballroom." John has worked with paupers, presidents, and politicians. He's built palaces and filled potholes. This is one man that never just lends his name. He rolls up his sleeves, pitches right at, steps up to the plate, and gets the job done. Now, before I leave and give you this wonderful gift, I do want to tell you that they said that I was allowed 2 minutes. As a former governor, I think I should be allowed 3 because I asked John and his wonderful family to join me for lunch so I could tell them about the others, history makers here tonight, who certainly exceed the criteria, each and every one of them. Now, my dear friend Eddie Basha, it would take quite a while for me to tell you all I know, but I call him my #1 son. Jerry Colangelo, I could tell you about our involvement in sports. That would take a great deal of time. Karl and Stevie Eller, I'd have to discuss the University of Arizona and Assistance League. And of course, certainly not last or least, is my dear friend of many, many years who was very close to my family, and my brother was his aide, Governor Senator Paul Fannin, who I cherish as one of my dearest and oldest friends. So that would take more than 2 lunches for you and your family, believe me.
Okay.
I have 2 regrets tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And one of them is that John didn't live in Gila County, preferably Globe. Or why didn't you stay there? And you could have put Globe on the map like you've done so many other places. And the other one is that I wouldn't be able to make the announcement tonight that the new stadium would be called John F. Long Stadium. In making this presentation, I hope that I'm around for a long time, along with all these wonderful people that are here tonight, to see you accomplish many more things for our great state and our country. Thank you, and thank you for the honor of being here with you, my friend.
Thank you.
Oh. I'll hold it.
Is this the stadium wrapped up in the package?
It's the key to the front door.
Oh, okay. Well, we do have a Maryville Stadium, you know, the Maryville Baseball Stadium. You know, one thing that really concerned me about this whole affair is, as I understood it, you and some of my family were going to talk about my early years. And I don't know if there's anyone present here tonight that attended Glendale High School when I did. And that would be something I'd just as soon not see in the brochure. I certainly appreciate your remarks, Rose. Brings back a lot of memories of when you and Mary and the other beautiful girls. You know, in those days, the girls played in shorts, and we didn't have a whole lot of entertainment. You know. So it was really something. You should see Rose in shorts.
Don't tell them how long ago, though.
Well, yeah, not recently. Well, I guess I better get off of that one, huh?
Before they tell us to get off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, where was I? I think that I pretty well speak for myself and all the others that received awards here this evening that we certainly do not do this community work and whatever all we're involved with just to receive some kind of an award. I think it's our very nature. We've been involved, when I say that, each one of us, you look back at their family history, been involved with community activities. It's something that is a little amazing to me that you get an award for doing something that you should be doing. But again, I'll accept it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You want me to walk you back?
No.
Now let's meet our next Arizona history maker.
I would want my epitaph to say, Eddie Basha, he was a good man but a bad boy, and that's how I want to be remembered. The Basha family first came to the United States in 1884. My great-grandfather was a man by the name of Tanous and came to New York, as many Lebanese did when those waves of immigration took place. And he opened an import-export business. And he sent for his oldest son, whose name was Najib Basha. And my grandparents came to Arizona in 1910 to the mining towns of Ray, Sonora. They were merchants. And it was there in 1911 that my father was born, the year before statehood. When my family moved to Chandler in 1919, my grandfather built a store in Chandler, but he was really never successful. Times were always tough. In fact, in 1932, when my grandfather died, my dad told a story oftentimes that they had to wait for the settlement of some insurance policy in order to resolve the funeral costs of my grandfather. It was really my dad and my uncle who began the company in 1932, and our family was very close-knit. We all lived together, and everybody worked. We grew up in this, I always call it the guild mentality. And I knew early on that this is the footsteps that I wanted to follow. And I did. My uncle dictated that I start working at age 11, something I couldn't believe. I mean, I really thought he was a czar, and a very unfair czar. I started, and I never stopped. I used to come out here and cashier at the store here in Chandler store. I was a stocker and a courtesy clerk, and I just decided that I wanted to have a facility for everything that we did. I was working 40, 50 hours a week, and I was getting 60 cents an hour. And I want to tell you something. Getting the first paycheck for me was a quantum leap in self-esteem. I mean, that was an accomplishment. And all throughout that time I was working, getting that paycheck and cashing that check and putting the money in the bank. In essence, I was able to pay for the first 2 years of my university tuition, room and board, or by working. The one thing that I never accomplished was learning how to back up a semi. I could never back up a semi in a space with about 18 to 24 inches on each side. It was, for some reason, that thing would never work for me. You know, it was frustrating. I didn't choose the university that I attended. My dad chose it for me. He wanted me to go to Stanford University, but I didn't like it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't like it. And I told my mother that I wanted to come home, and well, my Aunt Zelma was like my second mother. So I called her seeking some succor and some aid and some compassion. And she very candidly told me on the phone, and almost in a mean-spirited way I thought at the time, she says, you know the problem with you is that you were a big fish in a little pond, and now you're a little fish in a big pond and you can't take it. God, she made me so mad. I hung up the phone. But you know, after I hung up the phone, I realized that she was right. And from then on, there was a marked change. And I thought at one time that I wanted to go into education, maybe to be a teacher. Probably would have been a very poor one. But then my Uncle Ike, my dad's partner, died in 1958 when I was a junior at Stanford, and I came home for the funeral and proceeded to tell my dad that I would be quitting school to go to work. And he reminded me who was the boss, and he told me that on no uncertain terms was I to quit, that I would get my degree. He was a great teacher. When I was a freshman at Stanford, I wanted to go to a football game in Southern California, and I asked my dad if I could fly down. He said, sure, I'll pick you up. I said, my roommate's coming with me. He lives in Pasadena. Fine, he says. So Dad met us at the airport in Los Angeles, and I got off the plane, and hi, Dad, how are you? Shook his hand. That night he called me in. He said, you know, son, he said, I want to tell you something. He says, you embarrassed me today. He says, you didn't kiss me. He said, till the day my dad died, he said, I kissed him every day, every time I saw him. He says, I don't want you to be embarrassed to ever kiss me. And I tell that because it's a kind of an atonement for me, because it it hurt me that I hurt my dad so much. But I imbued that thought in my own sons. Until this day, one of the very neat things about working in this office is that I have 4 of my sons here, and they all come up and they kiss me. You know, when I see them, and embrace and hug. It's a wonderful thing. I graduated in 1959, and I became president very unexpectedly when my dad died in 1968. He was a very young man. He was 57 years old, and he was an incredible teacher. And his spirit and the spirit of my entire family who are deceased live in me. And I tried to continue on as they would want me to be. So when you ask why if Basha's is a company so engaged in the community, we do it because of the spirit of my family. It's a remarkable spirit. It's a remarkable legacy. I'm just privileged and proud that I can carry on in their tradition. You look around you, this museum where we're sitting, or this is the Zelma Basha Selmary Museum of Western Americana, Native American art. She was a great teacher for me, a great mentor, a great inspiration. Basha's expansion outside of the valley actually began in Sedona, and it was a consequence of my friend Rick Benson and I going to Sedona almost every other week to see Joe Beeler and Jim Reynolds and the other artists that lived there, and just to enjoy the ambiance of Sedona. It's just a beautiful community. And I became so attracted to Sedona, I decided that I wanted to build a store there. And so that really became our first out-of-valley store. But now we're in all 15 counties. We at Basha's being an Arizona company, and I think this holds true for most Arizona companies, is that we look at the citizens of Arizona as our stakeholders. And we're concerned about the stakeholders, the people who reside in the communities where we have stores. So I think we have a greater investment, a greater concern for Arizona, for the communities, for the citizens. I first began in public education in 1968, being involved in public education both at the local board level and then at the state board level and at the Board of Regents. And understanding as a businessman this synthesis, if you will, this symbiotic relation between education, business, prosperity, I became very frustrated with the lack of commitment, the lack of investment in education in our state. At one time, 80% of the people enrolled in our prisons had less than a high school education. And all this is a cost to the taxpayer. Well, I felt that it was time that we begin to invest to develop a policy and a program and a political ideology that invested in human capital, that expanded our transportation system, that provided for prosperity and growth. And that's what prompted me to run for governor. And although we lost the race to Mr. Symington, I think that was the battle, but I think we won the war. As we look at what has taken place, I think that we played maybe a small role, and maybe an important role, let history decide, in educating the public to the importance of education and prosperity and growth and quality of life. They're all interrelated. You can't divorce them. I realized that history was made when my family came to Arizona in 1910. And what we're doing in a real sense with me, my opinion, is we are commemorating a family that came to America to make a better life for itself, and in so doing made a better life for a whole host of other people. And I am just so honored and privileged that I have that opportunity to continue in the spirit of my grandfather and my father and mother and my aunts and all who helped make the Basha family what it is. My only prayer is that my sons will continue in my footsteps when I'm gone and exceed what little I've achieved and accomplished under my watch.
See the children run as the sun goes down among the fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Arizona history maker Eddie Basha.
Eddie's History Maker Award will be presented by the Most Reverend Thomas J. O'Brien, Bishop of Phoenix.
Thank you, Grady. Thank you very much. Eddie, congratulations. This is a proud moment for you tonight and your family. It's a happy moment for me as Bishop to present on behalf of the Arizona History Makers this award. As Catholics, you know, this is a big week. The Pope made cardinals in Rome this past week, and the Holy Father called me and wanted Eddie to know that he would apologize that Eddie wasn't made a cardinal. He said that while Eddie was very deserving, he just didn't think the red hat would look good on Eddie. But he asked that Eddie continue to develop the bella figura. Bella figura.
Is that a red wine?
No. But that's a red wine. No, but you've got the bella figura, all right. You mentioned Aunt Zelma a number of times in the video this evening, and I'm wearing this spectral cross here this evening, this beautiful turquoise cross that Zelma gave me a number of years ago. So I couldn't help but wear this tonight in tribute to Zelma, and thanksgiving to God for her love and her care for us. Eddie, your life is based in family and in Arizona, and your life has carried you through to politics, to business, to service, public service, as well as care for the church and for ecumenical activities. A broad spectrum of life and involvement, multiplicity of involvement on part of the Basha name. And you're a man of principle, a man of integrity, and a man of honesty. And we all know that about you, and we give thanks to God for that. Underneath, of course, is also the person who is very compassionate, who's very loving, who's very caring, who's very interested in the underprivileged, the poor, the minorities, the people who are in need. And you've reached out in many, many ways that most people in this room, including myself, don't know anything about. And for you, I'm sure that's just the way you'd like it to be. But you're a family man, but also a man of vision, a man of planning and care for others. And so you're not just only the friendliest grocer in Arizona, you're a friend to humanity. God bless you, and congratulations, Eddie.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you very much. I'm not only friendly, Bishop, I'm chubby. I want to thank the Historical League for this great honor. I am indeed privileged. I'm flattered. I mean, to be in the company of John Long and Stevie and Karl Eller and Jerry Colangelo, and especially our distinguished senator and governor and one of our most outstanding citizens, Paul Fannin. I mean, it's a great honor for me to be in this company. And knowing what these people have achieved, I feel a little different because I'm here on behalf of my family. What I've accomplished is in great part due to my family.
I'd like to commemorate them, if I may, tonight, those that are here, because they have been my life. First, my mother. I'm just so happy that Mother could be with me tonight. Mom, would you please stand and be recognized? My mother, Esma. She was cashiering in the Mesa store, and when I was time for me to be born, and they had to rush her to the hospital. And my aunts, Connie and Camille, Connie Basha, Vitelli, and Camille Basha, who helped guide me when I was a young man. We all lived together, and I call it the big house in Chandler. My Aunt Connie and Camille, will you please be recognized? They don't want to stand, but... And then there's we have a tribe here tonight. I have 6 sons and a surrogate son, and a 7th son who's really a cousin, and I have a couple of grandsons, and so, and I have 3 daughter-in-laws, and 1 soon-to-be. We can't wait for May 12th. Right, Ike? Does she still want you? Hey, I'll be quick because I only have this tux leased rented till 11 o'clock. I promise you. Let me just introduce real quick my sons in descending order of age. Trey, my oldest, then Ike. Guys, stand up. Come on. Trey, Ike, Mike, David, Joshua, Jeremy. My 6 sons. My daughter-in-laws, Leanne and Michelle and Corey, and my oldest but cousin, but I call my son Johnny Bash, and his wife Donna, and then Jennifer Harrow, Ike's fiance. My 2 grandsons that are here, Preston and Tyson, and then my surrogate son, Bryson Waterman, and my mother-in-law, Lou Mathis. And the love of my life and my mentor today, and one who means so much to me, Nadine, please stand, my wife. Thanks again to the Historical League for this great honor.
Thank you, Eddie. But Eddie, you know, don't sweat the tux. There's not all that much demand for your size. Hey, except me, maybe. Now let's meet this evening's final Arizona history maker.
I believe in family. That's where I got my fundamentals. That's where I learned a great deal about what loyalty means, what family means, what commitment and hard work, and I wouldn't trade that for all the money in the world.
Family, a sacred bond, a responsibility, a commitment. For Jerry Colangelo, taking care of family has always been of the utmost importance. But when Jerry thinks of family, he thinks about more individuals than just those related through bloodlines. He defines family as friends, employees, and fortunately for all of us, as fellow Arizonans. You see, for Jerry, we are all part of his family, a family he has always been proud of and has always wanted more for.
Back in 1968, I had no idea what might lie ahead for me and my family. And as the years have passed, we know we have been blessed with wonderful friends, wonderful opportunities here, and from day one I've been very cognizant of that opportunity and believed in putting back into the community, trying to make this community a better place in which to live. This is our adopted home and has been for the better part of 30-plus years. So we're very fortunate to have been granted that opportunity back then to come to Arizona.
He was born Gerald John Colangelo in 1939. His lifelong journey to the top began humbly in a working-class Chicago suburb known as Chicago Heights.
I feel very blessed that I was born into a working-class family. It was very much an Italian neighborhood in a suburb of Chicago. People didn't have much, but people took care of one another. Whatever we had, we all shared with one another. So we didn't realize we didn't have anything. We thought we were doing quite well. The only home I ever lived in as a youngster was the home my grandfather built out of the remnants of 2 railroad boxcars and some extra lumber. And yet, that was home.
Jerry didn't spend his days as a child studying. He spent his time playing sports, where he excelled in both basketball and baseball, receiving 66 college basketball scholarship offers and numerous offers to pitch professionally. But an event his senior year in high school put an end to his dream of being a major league pitcher.
My competitive juices forced me, as I say it, to pitch 5 games in 1 week, and by the end of the week, that arm wasn't quite the same anymore, and that was more or less the end of the pitching career. But I got an education, first one in my family to get a college education.
As an all-Big Ten basketball player, Jerry graduated from the University of Illinois in 1962 with a degree in physical education. He and his wife Joan, whom he had married in 1961, decided to move back to Chicago, where Jerry dabbled in a couple of clothing businesses. But then one day in 1966, Jerry's destiny finally found him.
And then I met this individual, Dickmann, who had a dream. He had a dream of getting an NBA franchise in the city of Chicago. So I went to work for him selling incentive merchandising programs. And 6 months later, we had the NBA franchise, and we named them the Chicago Bulls.
By 1968, the NBA was ready to expand out west, and the owners of the soon-to-be Phoenix Suns wanted to make Jerry, at age 28, the youngest general manager in all professional sports.
Well, I came here for an interview in February, late February of 1968. It was 20 below zero when I left O'Hare, and when I landed at Terminal 1, it was about 70 degrees, and there were a few palm trees, and I was impressed right off the bat. By the end of that day, I was pretty much certain that we were coming back and this was going to be home for my young family. Everyone loves a winner, and we made the playoffs our second year in the league, and I actually coached that team the second half of that year. And we played in the finals just 6 years later in 1975-76 against the Boston Celtics.
Won't start until it's clutch. They'll have to throw it up. Garher, turnaround, shot in the air. It's good.
Game in Boston was considered maybe the greatest game of all time. That's certainly a memory that I'll never forget. But that particular series, that year, that team brought the community together. Phoenix is a melting pot. This valley brings people together from all over the country. But for that time and place, it galvanized the community, and people, for the most part, were all Suns fans.
After nearly 20 successful years in the Valley, the Suns just about set in 1987. A drug scandal that allegedly involved some Suns players nearly brought down the franchise. The community was disheartened, and the owners wanted out.
We went through a difficult time in the early 80s with some teams that did not play up to par, and we had some questionable individuals, and of course, that led to the opportunity to buy the franchise in 1987, and it led me to believe and more or less prophesize that out of adversity comes opportunity, and that's exactly what took place.
The deal nearly didn't happen, however. Wall Street's Black Monday was unknowingly looming, and a few key investors had pulled out.
I had about 6 weeks in terms of a timetable to put the transaction together. I had some individuals and some corporate partners that were lined up. At the very last minute, 2 of those corporate partners fell out. That particular evening, on a Thursday night, my attorney felt sorry for me and said basically, nice try, great effort, you fell short, and I just wouldn't accept it that easily. Without any sleep that night, came up with an idea, spoke to the sellers, put together a creative way of dealing with the shortfall that I had, and we closed the transaction. Black Monday on the stock market meant that those who were contemplating investing with me probably would not have invested with that occurrence taking place on Monday. So timing's everything in life, and fortunately in that deal, my timing was good.
Through a series of blockbuster trades and acquisitions, Jerry quickly turned around the Suns, both on and off the court. Next, he turned his attention to building the Suns a new home, one that would secure their future here in the Valley and provide a renaissance for downtown Phoenix.
The city was growing. The Phoenix Suns needed a new facility, and we announced that we were going to go out and build a new arena. Downtown was kind of a wasteland. It was a place you wouldn't want to send your kids. People who worked downtown were anxious to leave their offices with some security, get in their cars, and leave for somewhere else.
America West Arena opened in 1992, and downtown Phoenix became the place to be. New businesses were opening everywhere, and the Suns were enjoying their best year ever.
The 1992-93 season was a fabulous year. We had a new coach, we had some new players, we had a big trade, one of the NBA's flashiest players in Charles Barkley, a new arena, a lot of things happening in downtown, and all the stars were aligned, so to speak. Got to the finals, were beaten in 6 games. Big disappointment as far as I'm concerned, because I don't want to say it was all for naught, but it was the one thing that I've yet to accomplish, and that is win that NBA championship. And in my heart of hearts, I thought that was the year.
Right after the Suns and Bulls championship series, Jerry was approached by some local residents who felt that Arizona was ready for Major League Baseball. Furthermore, they felt Jerry was just the man to bring it.
I immediately put up my hands and said, no, you have the wrong person. My plate's full, I'm just too busy with everything else. After some due diligence on my own part, after speaking with people within the industry, I weighed the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses, and made the decision to go ahead and make it happen. And the bottom line was, I felt it would add such a major addition to the quality of life for not only the people living here today, but for future generations.
To help snowball the synergy that was already taking place, it was decided to build Bank One Ballpark in downtown Phoenix. 5 years of planning and hard work paid off when in 1998, the Arizona Diamondbacks took to the field.
Opening night was a great night. The anticipation of opening up the ballpark and our first major league game, etc. And it was a very festive event. We actually selected a couple of young kids sitting in the upper deck to throw out the first ball on that first game, and I escorted the two out to the mound, and they were the ones who were able to take that moment and cherish it. And it was a fabulous night. It was a fabulous moment, and something I'll never forget.
The Diamondbacks were an immediate hit. In only their second year, they won the National League West. Besides the Suns and the Diamondbacks, Jerry has brought arena football and the WNBA to Phoenix. He also played a vital role in bringing the NHL to the Valley, making Phoenix one of the few select markets to have the Big Four: football, basketball, baseball, and hockey.
There's a place for sports and entertainment in our society. People need outlets. People need to be entertained, and professional sports and even amateur sports are ways of doing that as spectators.
The teams Jerry has given the state have brought our communities together, made us one. For years, we have gathered in front of TVs and radios as a unified whole to cheer them on. They've become part of our identity, and in turn, part of our family. The state is a better place to live because of them and because of the man behind them. Jerry has always been an example for us all, whether it be through Phoenix Suns or Diamondback Charities, or by the way he's always run his organization as a family.
You know, there's so much said about people who kind of believe in hard work and luck and timing. And there was a time in my life when I would have fallen into that trap myself, but there was a time when I came to understand that regardless of how much work I put into it, God had a plan for my life. And I think His plan was to put me and my family here in Arizona. That's what I truly believe. I know too many people who are smarter, who can do a job better than I can, and I sit back and wonder, why not them? Why me? Well, it wasn't my plan, it was His plan.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome history maker Jerry Colangelo.
Jerry's award will be presented by his friend and one of the best friends the History Maker program has ever had, Bill Shover.
Jerry, congratulations. Look at that beam. He's won 3 straight with the Suns. His baseball team is still undefeated. Just think about that. Jerry, I don't know what to say that hasn't been said about you through the years, but I do have some stories to tell about you that maybe I'll relate to this audience. Jerry, everything you've heard about him is true. He's a grand man of everything. His family, the loyalty to his players, to his fans, loyal to everybody. He's the easiest tap in town. I've tapped Jerry for about everything you can think of, and he never asks why. He says, if you need it, it's important to me. I cannot tell you the things that Jerry has done for this community because you know most of them. But let me tell you something that you don't know about Jerry. He's a very emotional man, as you know. He's a very private man and a very public position, but he's very private. But his longing all time, I think, is to be a baseball coach. When he had that basketball team, he did very well with it. He was always thinking about the baseball. So one night I was coaching a team in the Kachina Hopi Little League down the street from where Jerry was living. He wandered down, he saw my team down there playing, and he asked if he could be a coach. Well, we gave him a tryout. He was okay. You heard about that bad arm that he had. He wasn't great as batting practice pitcher, but he was okay. But we let him try his batting practice one time, and Jerry was kind of nervous about it, and these were 10-year-old boys, and he plunked one of them, hit him right on the side. And Jerry felt terrible. We felt terrible. The kid was dying on the field, you can imagine, moaning, groaning. And I think he was looking for a public injury lawyer at the time, as a matter of fact. Anyway, Jerry and I took him to his home to see his mother, and his mother happened to be a nurse. And she put him on the couch there, and she looked at him, and she quickly found out that he was exaggerating his injury. She says, "Peter, get up and go back to practice." Jerry felt very relieved about that. But one of the greatest things I remember about when we had a later team, the Arcadia Sons in the American Legion, we were coaching a team of about boys 16 years of age. And we had this one young man on the team who was a mop-up pitcher. I don't know if we were winning or if we were losing big or something, but you know what a mop-up is? He goes into the last, and he has to just get a couple outs. So this kid was out there pitching. He was a second baseman. Jerry was sitting in the dugout like he was always overcoaching. And he kept looking at this young man out there, and he kept saying inside fastball, outside curveball, the whole thing, giving him all the signals. Finally, the young man just kept studying Jerry, and he walked over to the dugout, put his hands on the dugout screen. I'll never forget it. He says, "Mr. Colangelo, I'm just trying to get the damn ball over the plate." Remember that, Jerry? Well, anyway, Jerry has given so much to this community. But I want to say something about somebody else, though. The person behind Jerry is right here, and I'm going to take the honor of introducing Joni. Joni, will you please stand? That's the love of his life. Joni, you've done a good job with Jerry. I will say that, Joni, through the years. All I can say is that you've been a friend to everybody, Jerry, in this community. Not just to the charities, but everybody. I think that the History Makers would say you're a friend because between you and Basha, you've packed the house tonight with your families, I think, alone. I just want to say that on behalf of the people here that we just love you, Jerry Colangelo. There is much more we can say, but I have one thing that came out of a Kipling poem from Gun Gadeen. And he said something about media, I guess he was talking about. And I used to be with media, so I can say it now. Jerry's had some problems with the media, and they used to say things about Jerry that were not necessarily true, but he would always stand there and accept them. And Kipling said, referring to Gun Gadeen, you're a better man than I am, Jerry Colangelo. And that's what the media should say to you. Congratulations, Jerry.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Well, Bill and I go back many, many years. I met him when I first came to Arizona 32 years ago, and he gave me a great deal of advice, put me in the right direction. I thought one of the stories you were going to talk about was the idea of bringing a football bowl game to Arizona. This is a true story. Bill came to me one day, he says, Jerry, what do you think about a football bowl game during the holidays? I said, Bill, I have enough problems just trying to get people in the arena, over at the Coliseum, rather, not the arena. He said, Jerry, it's only a one-day event. That's the Fiesta Bowl, which is like a 365-day event. That was Bill's idea, by the way. But we were happy to participate. You know, hearing some of the honorees tonight, there's a common theme. It's family, it's commitment, it's hard work. It's true with each of the individuals that have spoken here tonight. And I personally feel very honored. I'm going to say some of the same things that others have already said, to be in the company of those others who have been honored here tonight. And Eddie, I have a question. Were you born without hair? When I saw those pictures of you during the video, I wasn't quite sure who it was. Oh, that was his twin. That was his twin. But it's, you know, I love history, and I love to reminisce and to hear stories about what Arizona was like and the families that came at the turn of the century, and the unbelievable work that John F. Long did on the west side of Phoenix, and Senator Fannin for what he accomplished for this state, and the Ellers who Joni and I met when we first came to Arizona. In fact, I was hired in Karl's office on the Black Canyon Highway back in 1968. So I have strong feelings for all the people who have been honored here tonight. I do have a lot of family. It's 11 o'clock. I don't think I'll introduce all of my family, but there's 3 or 4 tables of family. And I guess one other thing for Eddie, I didn't hear any girls. All you have is boys? Well, I had 3 girls and a boy, and we have 10 grandchildren, 6 girls and 4 boys. I was in trouble. We had 5 girls in a row before we had a boy. But we're catching up. And so I'm honored to have my family here tonight. I'm just honored to be part of this whole evening, and I want to thank the League for this honor, and I'm very proud to be an Arizonan. Thank you.
I do want to congratulate this evening's History Makers. What an extraordinary occasion this has been. The things that you have done have been amazing. You have shaped our state with your work and your philanthropy. You have illuminated our lives with your examples. And you have honored all of us with your presence here this evening. Thank you for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here. We'll see you in 2003, and good night.